Hi, everyone, and welcome to Change Lab, where we explore how to work through transformation in a time of unpredictability. Every leader that I'm talking to right now is grappling with the speed of change. And really, what they're finding is that the old playbooks just don't work anymore. While it's awfully tempting to reach for the next tool or framework, Karen has a better idea. She believes, and I agree, that mindset changes are really the best way to work through this. I'm very honored to be joined by my friend and colleague, Karen Blair. Karen is widely respected and trusted by top leaders all around the world as the president and founder of Evoking Insights, where she works with innovators and change makers, primarily in biotech and tech, to help senior leaders gain strategic clarity, take bold action, and lead with greater impact in an unpredictable world. She's a trusted coach and a strategic advisor who's known for her mix of warmth, candor, and deep insight. Karen is also writing a book, which we're all anticipating. This book will help leaders activate bold strategies and create momentum even when the path is unclear. Earlier in her career, Karen held senior leadership roles at Life Technologies, which is now part of Thermo Fisher Scientific, where she led corporate strategy and customer experience and partnered directly with the CEO and the executive team to shape the company's direction. She also spent a decade at PwC, and she brings more than 30 years of experience at the intersection of strategy and leadership. Outside of work, Karen's a lifelong learner and adventurer, always challenging herself and others to see the world in new ways and to unlock what's possible. Karen, we're so glad to have you here.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity.
You've said many things that have resonated with me, but I'd like to start with one that we were just talking about, and it is that most leaders aren't stuck because they don't have a plan. They're really stuck because the ground keeps shifting beneath them. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think that your leaders know this very well because they're living it. What I want your leaders to know is that their greatest challenge isn't the chaos that's around them, it's their instinct to control it. And that's a hard one to receive. Like, I know I
Yes.
react to that immediately because we all want and have agency and a capacity to affect change. You work with change transformational leaders. So to say I don't have control, I know I resist quite significantly. And it's exactly that instinct that is causing us to be less effective in an unpredictable world. And the biggest and hardest thing that we have to accept is you cannot control the uncontrollable.
Mm, that is a tough one.
And so we have to discern what is uncontrollable. And I'm not saying we're going to let go of all of the gifts that we have from plans and structure and accountability and predictable results. We are going to keep using those when they work. But if
Mm,
you're feeling stuck, those tools probably aren't working.
exactly. Exactly. Let's talk a little bit about what does work and how leaders might think about and reframe their typical ways of going about things. Let's start with problems. I think we're all wired to identify a problem and then to run after the solving of that problem. And I know that you encourage a reframe of that. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. And as you mentioned at the beginning, what we're going to talk about today are mindset shifts. And they are a piece of the puzzle. They are not the answer, which we'll come back to in just a second. They are a pretty solid leverage point, right? To enable to open up new possibilities. And in the same way, I'm going to try to open up new possibilities for you as leaders. That's what you want to do for your organization, right? And again, not through that control. So the easiest for some people, mindset can be abstract, but a lot of people can relate to the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset
Mm,
of Carol Dweck's work, right? Mindset is like putting on another pair of glasses and seeing the world fundamentally differently.
mm.
It shapes how you interpret, how you think, how you decide what is possibilities. So, to your point, most of us have been trained there is a problem to solve. Therefore, there is a solution. And with enough expertise, the answer is both knowable and probable. And I assure you that I am right there with all of you. And you're like, do not blow this up, especially my dear engineers, because this is very much the mindset of engineering and expertise broadly. And it is what most
Mhm.
of us of a certain generation were raised with: analyze, plan, control, manage risk. Again, super valuable toolkit. But in an unpredictable world that can't be controlled, we have to shift more to an orientation around those possibilities to create, right? As an example, I'll take an engineer. He is in the middle of a consumer goods organization. The markets are shifting, the strategy is shifting. They have been creating value through innovation for decades. They are a market leader. They now find themselves in a commodity market. The
Mm.
mandate comes down from top leadership to him and his team. We now need to position ourselves to compete in a commoditized market, right? You have to put out more product faster, more than double what you've historically done. And he and his team go after it like a problem to solve, right? And
Mm.
they bring all of their engineering expertise to it. And in our work together, what we revealed was when you shifted from that problem to solve, which is often optimizing what is known, shifting to how do I fundamentally rethink? I actually have to redesign this engineering
Mm.
capability
Mhm.
fundamentally to meet these new conditions. And so now he's in the world of imagination, discovery, possibility, exploration, creating, right? And so they're now redesigning, in this case, a capability rather than re-engineering or optimizing what already is, because it's not designed for that future. So that's an example of like how to approach something different and just recognize, again, problem to solve, great.
Mhm.
But if you're getting stuck, maybe shift into possibility to create. What do I need to rethink? What assumptions do I need to challenge? How do I need to approach it differently?
I love that. I recently heard an exec at Salesforce talk about looking at a situation and asking if we were starting from scratch, if this were a new business, how would we approach this? And I think it's a similar mindset. It's not starting where you are, it's starting with this open field of possibility. And that's a different way of thinking. And certainly you get a different set of results from that
Yeah,
kind of thinking, I would
yeah.
think.
Yeah. And the plan comes after, right? The plan locks down action, but this is the step in front of it, really strategy.
Let's talk a little bit about the plan because we're all trained, and you have this big strategy background. We're all trained to create the strategy and build the plan and follow the plan and act on it in this rigid way. As a strategist, I think you are now recommending a nuanced difference to that approach. And I'd love to have folks hear how you think maybe things have changed a little bit.
Yeah. Again, it's that shift from living in more of a causal and linear way of the world operating, when cause and effect were knowable and predictable with enough expertise. Plans work very well in that environment. But we're not in that environment, right? So it used to be set the plan, execute the plan. All
Mhm.
think you do, right? Plan is about action and the strategy is about decisions. And we oversimplify and say, well, I'll make a bunch of big decisions over here, and then you people over there go take action against it, right?
Mhm.
And on a micro level, you can see it, right? With a team member, maybe for many of your leaders, it's too long ago, but when you went from individual contributor to manager, a lot of times it is that model, right? It's that black and white, all think and decide, you go do. But again, in this unpredictable world, it's really much more dynamic. And so that's maybe the shift is from a linear static orientation to a dynamic system. And so I
Right.
use the language of you have to activate your strategy, So it's much more alive, right? An easy thing maybe for people to connect to is agile methodology, which is premised on this same kind of mental model, right? Using my silly metaphor, it's think, decide, act, think, decide, act. It's much more iterative loop. It's happening much faster. As an example, a client who had a major digital transformation underway, I would imagine familiar to some of your leaders. This leader has an 18-month digital transformation going on, and then they get acquired, right? So the whole plan gets disrupted. Now,
Right.
maybe not merger all the time, but disruption to plan is familiar. And what's different is that for this leader, instead of either throwing up the plan and starting completely over and replanning, which I'm sure people have done, and it's really frustrating because every time you replan, you have to replan. It's like you have a very short shelf life of these plans.
Yes.
And what she shifted to is what I call more navigating. What's the strategic intent? What are you after? What's your purpose? And a lot of times, and I know you appreciate this, is anchoring on that customer or customers you are designed to serve. And if you don't have that clarity, you can't get the agility that you need to navigate this dynamic world, right? For them, improving care conditions for their patients was a North Star. It held, right? So if you
Right.
think about it as
Yes.
like a metaphor of, do I have a North Star that sets common direction? You have to navigate conditions, right? It is not a straight linear plan. So when you find yourself like trying to replan, that's that gripping for control and still holding on to an old linear model. Those are the models we're trying to move to. We need to move to be effective in this context.
And I think the way that you talk about it with this North Star and being anchored in purpose, one of our clients is Kaiser Permanente, and every leader in that organization is anchored in the purpose of delivering better care. And that goes back to the why, the Simon Sinek thing, but it is a shift to say, okay, we just focus on the North Star, and the way we get there is going to move around and look different, and we're going to move
Yeah.
faster.
And the nuance I would add is that North Star is too high level. You can imagine there's cascading levels of clarity and
Right,
specificity
right,
because you can drive a truck through that North Star. Now, it's appropriate for Kaiser, but if I'm sitting in the customer service department and trying to make some decisions, that's too big. It doesn't help me know how to navigate. So the North Star, it has to translate down to specific
right.
context. If it doesn't guide decision making in your context, you as the leader have to translate that North Star down. So, because
So
what we're
you've got,
trying to get is stability of direction in my context and
mhm.
agility of action in the real time adaptation.
And I think it's a really useful nuance that while there is an overarching North Star, if you will, that has to be layered into the organization in a what does that mean to me? And please translate it to my role so that I can navigate appropriately because my navigation might not be the same navigation as the CEO's navigation.
I
Call
think
out.
about it as Russian nesting dolls, or you can think about it as layers of onion, right? So every additional North Star has to fit in, right? So you
But
don't get to
yes,
run off into a totally different direction. So it has to
right.
logically fit, but it comes in with specificity to your context.
Yes, yes. And I think for leaders, not only do they have to think about, okay, what does it mean to me as a leader, but looking a layer down and how do I communicate this and think about what it means a layer down because that has different context, right?
Yeah, and another way to think about it is policy documents. So policy documents guide our decision making. It's the same kind of idea. You're trying to give, it sounds funny to call strategy a policy document, right? But you're trying to give principles that
Hmm.
guide real time decision making. That's what you're
Guiding
trying to do.
principles. I love that. And I think that people need something to hold on to, as you said, because we're asking them to let go of something that they're used to having and holding on to. So I think it's really important to give them those guiding principles so they don't feel untethered as they're
Exactly.
navigating, right?
And that's really the key, is that we can get lost in the middle between where we are and where we want to go. So one, this time is calling us to do a much better job of describing where we want to go and who we're becoming, not just what we're achieving. And then we just have so much more ambiguity in the middle, right? That we have to
Indeed.
navigate. And so what decisions do you make in that gray zone? The plan made it so much easier. I didn't have to decide. It was all mapped out. I just need a plan. Plans soothe our emotional discomfort with
Oh,
not knowing.
yes. Yes, exactly. And every leader I'm talking to right now uses the word ambiguity. The words I hear over and over again are speed, ambiguity, and being able to operate in those environments, which it's not natural, as you say. What we want as human beings is to know things. We want certainty. So it's a challenge, and having some things to hang on to is helpful.
Yeah, and
Um,
we have to expand our capacity. That's what we're doing. That's what I am advocating for as a leader and for leaders, is to navigate through this time. We have to build more leadership capacity. And the easiest way to make that tangible is think about an ocean, body of water.
mhm.
And if you or I threw a rock in an ocean, almost no disruption, right? It has so little impact, right? If you do a giant size rock and I try to throw it into my bowl of water, I'm going to break the bowl of water. And so
Right.
that's what I mean by capacity. We have to build our capacity to hold ambiguity, to hold discomfort, to
Mm,
hold competing tensions of where I am and where I want to be. That's what we have to grow into as leaders to lead through this
right.
time.
And it's a lot of work.
It's just not practiced as consistently as it could be.
I think we're all going to learn to practice this because we're not going to have
Yeah,
much choice
I
if
agree with that.
because the doing the same things isn't going to work anymore.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Back to the thing about the ocean, that's the impact it's having on you as a leader. When you as a leader have more impact, then all of this coming at you doesn't ripple, disrupt you as much,
mm,
right? And so you
right.
as the leader, if you can hold that and not be as disrupted, then you can be the guide of that for others.
Mm, that's fantastic. I love that.
Yeah.
I'd like to touch on another mindset shift that you talk about. And this one really resonates with me. For those of us who are achievement results oriented, this is about a reframe of that. And I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about that for the type A's who may be watching, what that means. It takes a lot of discipline for some of us to do what you're recommending, but please tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, this is a tricky one. It's a bit of what we were just talking about, is how do you hold the ambiguity? And of course, as leaders, we have to deliver results, right? You have to translate
Mhm,
vision into impact. Our credibility comes from those results delivered. The short-term pressure on us is unrelenting. Many of us are wired for action, achieve, accomplish. And so, again, it serves well until it doesn't, right? And when you are leading strategically, you have to navigate, both for yourself and then for others, this gap of not knowing, of taking committed action without evidence that it's the right action, and that
mhm,
it's moving you closer towards short-term results. It's like rubber hits the road. People are missing targets, missing plan, missing milestones. You are missing results. What do? 9 out of 10 people try to close the gap to hit the result. Understandable on some level. And the opportunity as a strategic leader is to zoom out and take a bigger perspective and say, what are we creating? What are we moving towards? What are we learning from this? What is it? So go back to the agile mode, right? I'm not
mhm,
attached to an outcome. I am, but I'm not. That's the big shift, right? I still want that outcome. I'm trying to move towards it, but I'm not gripping it. And I get that this is a huge shift, right? And it speaks to the capacity to hold this tension of I have to do things that cause people to keep believing in this vision, this future, some reason to believe that we are in fact moving and not just stagnating and stalling out and
Right.
being less than capable. It's an experiment, it's discovery, it's
Mm,
learning. When I ran customer experience, net promoter score is a very common metric. There is
right.
both a transactional NPS and a relational NPS. And interestingly enough, they have a difference of time horizon to them, right? So the transactional can be measured every day. So you can imagine I'm sitting in ops review, and guess what metric I'm held accountable to with a transactional NPS, or what we call TNPS.
Hmm.
And my team, bless them, relentlessly chasing it. And there were times I'd pull back and I'd be like, guys, the TNPS says whatever, something negative, but let's look at the bigger picture. What do we know from the relational NPS that we took a quarter or a year ago? What do we know about core beliefs and assumptions about what we're trying to create? What is this telling us that needs to shift or doesn't shift? And sometimes, in fact, a lot of times, you come back and you say, no shift is required.
Yeah.
Now, you as a
We're
leader
tracking.
have to sell that because the metric, the thing you can measure in the short term, says you're off track. And you took enough time to pull back and conclude, no, we're not.
Mm.
But either way, the key is you're learning, number one. And number two, you took the time to actually reflect before instinctively just go close the gap.
And I think we all know it's a long view lesson. Always think about I think it was Stanford's study with the marshmallows and the kids. They couldn't eat the marshmallows. They could get more marshmallows if they waited. It was a longitudinal study, and the kids that waited turned out to be more successful in life. Yours is a variation on that. It's not just you have to wait for the result, but it's also that along the way you may see some indicators that might tell you you're on track or you're not on track. But it's really about that long view and not getting all caught up in what happened in the last 10 minutes.
And it's
Called.
funny, I have that in my book. The big difference is that's 15 minutes of elapsed time. And Amazon's one of my favorite examples because it was a decade of elapsed time before that company made money.
Such a great example. And Bezos just stood tall. He just said, we're going to get there. I know what I'm doing. And look at Amazon today.
Yeah.
But that
Yeah.
takes a lot of grit to go through 10 years.
And conviction and
Yes.
curiosity and openness. And yeah, it's a tall order. And leading strategically is not for the faint of heart. It is a hard job and incredibly rewarding because you get to
Mm.
create something.
Certainly have a view of leadership that reflects who you are as a person because you are a learner, an explorer, and that really lights you up. And I think it's for leaders, it's who can be trained on that result. It is, as we keep saying, a mindset shift to move to the curious and this is interesting and this is fun. And you have a lot to teach us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I want to reinforce what I'm standing for is an and, not an or, right? Adding tools to your toolkit. It's not tossing out old ones that no longer work. It's adding new ones for the situations where that tool doesn't work.
That makes it certainly palatable for everybody because we all want more to be better and we might be a little reluctant to let go of what has served us. And I think looking at what has served us in the past and reflecting on whether that's still serving us is certainly part of the formula. We are just about at time, and I want to make sure that we reference a couple of resources that we have in the show notes. One of them is you have a strategic impact quiz that we're going to put in the show notes. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is, Karen?
Yeah, thank you. It's a fun little quiz. It's 12 questions. It'll take you no time at all. It is not rigorously researched and all of those things, but its purpose is help you discern what I call the distinction between the planner stage of game-changing strategic leadership is the language I use, and the creator stage. That's what we
Mm,
have been talking about today. There are
mhm,
two other stages, one that you could think of as preceding, but it is also not a linear model, but is about the thinker, and those are people that are leaning more into their strategic thinking capacity in particular. And then the extreme, past the creator that builds upon it, is what I refer to as the transformer. And these
mm.
are game changing leaders that lead with the courage of conviction and connection, and people like Indra Nooyi and Herb Kelleher and Howard Schultz. So that's the vision and the aspiration in my mind. But in any case, you'll get some strengths, some potential development opportunities, and some resources if you're curious.
Excellent. We're also going to put a piece in the show notes that describes that journey from planner to creator. So if somebody finds that they're early in the journey, they can get a little more information from that as well. I always appreciate every conversation I have with you. I very much appreciate how you approach things from a deeply human
Mm.
standpoint, as well as a very practical standpoint to help leaders become better people and better leaders. So thank you for an amazing conversation today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And if people are curious about planner to creator, jump on the book wait list too, because that's what the book's all about.
Yes, can't wait to get our hands on your book.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. And my heart just goes to the leaders because, like you, I talk to many of them, and it is just demanding. It is
Mhm.
really demanding, and a lot of empathy and compassion for what each of you has to navigate, and know that you're not alone and you're not doing it wrong. We're just building into a new model.
Yes, with the help of insightful people like you, we'll all figure it out. We got to get there.
We will. We will.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. My pleasure. Take care.